line up behind the mics, and we'll take some questions. We have a few minutes for that. Let me also, though, ask you, how far do you know the end of the season now, where you're going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually what we do is we define the tent poles for the year, the big moves. Mm-hmm. And the only thing is where they slide. I mean, at the end of the first year, if you remember, we thought we have the Bond stuff, that Interloper, come in at the end of the first year as the last 3 episodes. And it was like, we were so crammed for plot. It was like, okay, well, why don't we make that the beginning, if only half of the second year? Mm-hmm. And we were so enjoying, and not only enjoying, we were having trouble sometimes with schedules with both Bond and Blake, that it kept kind of moving back. Mm-hmm. So I think the real thing is sometimes this stuff expands. Mm-hmm. What was the question?
You know where you're going.
We know where we're going.
And you know where you're going. Okay, over here.
Thank you so much for an amazing panel and an incredible show. My question is as follows. I think that the show is extremely authentic as to every emotional aspect of it and all the relationships, but not perhaps quite as authentic when it comes to portraying the legal procedures, specifically having a trial the day after a client walks into the office. Could you talk a little bit, I know that looking at lawyer Alicia in depositions for weeks at a time might not be as narratively compelling. Could you talk a little bit about what the writing process is like in trying to balance wanting a good narrative thrust versus having something that's credible and realistic? Thank you.
You really, I mean, it's one of the scabs on our show that we keep picking at, trying to find a way to make that work better. And the only thing we've let ourselves, the lie we tell ourselves to face work each day is that we don't usually have someone walk through the door. Usually it's a case in theory that they've been working, even if you listen to the dialogue, they say, this is something I've been doing for 6 months now. We usually try to grab that 1 week where you're either in court or in depositions. But you're exactly right. There's a lie at the basis of it. We have 2 lawyers on staff who, we check their eye rolls. If their eye rolls are too big, we just, all right, tell us then. How do we, what do we? And the bottom line is, I think the only thing that saves it is the ability to suggest that all these cases are happening piggyback fashion. We were trying to do 2 episodes this year that were actually happening at the same time. So you would see Alicia leave the door, and then in the next episode you would see her walk through the door into the other case. It just became such a nightmare. But that was the attempt to show, look, a lawyer isn't just doing one thing. Mm-hmm. We're creating this fiction where she can just pursue one case, and she does too many exciting things. I mean, the lawyer's life is pretty tedious.
Well, I can say I know whenever I watch something that shows a journalist's life and it goes far off, it's very annoying. But but on the other hand, I actually was covering a case a few weeks ago, and I came home and said to my husband, TV law is so much more interesting than the real thing. It is really boring to sit there. So I think, it's the dictates of drama, really.
Hi. Actually, it's a little bit more of a praise. I love the new storyline that you created between Martha and Caitlin. I'm an attorney. I'm in politics, so I identify very greatly with the show. And Christine, you touched on it a little bit before, but one of the things I truly appreciate about the show is how the female characters nurture the younger female characters on the show as attorneys. You contrast that by showing the Old Boys Network with the basketball games, and generally in both areas, there's not as much of a girls' network. And, you're always put into 2 types of categories, the Marthas or the Caitlins. And it was quite telling when Alicia found out that she wasn't actually the Martha character that she thought she was, but the Caitlin. Right. And it was an incredible storyline. But I just want to know if it was a conscious decision to have the female characters seem nurturing of the other characters, because anybody who is in any profession who's worked for another woman usually, will tell you that that's not the easiest thing to do. So I think it's a very interesting storyline on the show.
I think from the beginning it was always supposed to be that Diane was the mentor who tries to sabotage the mentee. Mm-hmm. And one of the villainy there was supposed to be that. And so when we veered off that, there's suggestion of, is a mentorship a poisonous relationship too, not just a one that helps people advance. And what was lucky with that is the actress who played Martha, Grace Rex, is that her name?
Yes.
She was so good in the first scenes with this interview, which were tiny
I told her,
little
I was like, you're
scenes.
coming back. She's like, no, I don't think so. I was like, believe me, you're coming back.
That we were able to kind of create that dichotomy. And then Anna Camp, who plays the Caitlin character, and what you wanted to see was that people have this prejudice towards the blonde as being a certain way too. And you just want the show to try to break that stereotype of what the blonde would do.
But what was interesting in the pilot with Christine and I was that she was incredibly judgmental, that Alicia had given up her career for her man, and therefore judged her harshly. And what was great about, what I love about their relationship, which is slowly building, is that she's seeing that she's actually a really good lawyer. And women do have to prove themselves harder for women because there is no sexual relationship. There is no, let me, if I wear this today, is he going to be nicer? Or, you know.
But I also saw with all that you went through, with all that Alicia went through, that you remained able to do your work.
Right.
You had enormous integrity, enormous calm. You handled yourself beautifully publicly. I mean, there's so much more to Alicia than just like that she's a good lawyer. She's an extraordinary human being. That's why I think it was also hard for Diane to try and break them up, because she thought, what a perfect pair in another context.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Will deserve happiness with such an amazing woman? You know what I mean? But yeah, there's many, many layers to this level of respect that's built up in the show.
Robin.
Yes, I just, two things. One, I'm picking up on that last comment. I feel as if it's not as just the depth of the women on the show, but their sense of sisterhood that is very unusual, and I would commend and hope to see continue in terms of Diane and Alicia and Kalinda. I think that's been great. Two women going out for drinks. It's just very unusual. And, you know, I wonder how conscious that is, and I would encourage you to continue it. There's so much kind of catfighting when two women are on TV together. But also, just if you could explain, there seems to be something very New York-centric to me about the show, even though it takes place in Chicago. Partly it's sophistication, it's intelligence, but also the actors. I'm very conscious of just that these are like great theatrical actors, and you really appreciate that. And so I wonder about the choice to shoot here, and whether or not there's any cost in terms of just, you know, the Hollywood sort of constellation, if you guys feel as if you're in any way marginalized because of that.
Jules, do you want to explain why we're shooting in New York?
Well, they wanted to shoot it in LA, but
Or Vancouver.
or Vancouver. And I said, good luck. I won't be a part of it. And I'm sad to say that. But I couldn't shoot. I have a husband who has a real regular job and a child I want to raise in New York. And my family is here. And I spent 6 years in LA, and I knew I couldn't live there or ask that of my family. So I said, I totally get it. And I'm going to be so sad not to do this part. And I think it was like a week later, they said, we're going to make it work. And they made it work. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah, and the...
I don't think there have been any negatives for us in terms of the production being here. We've gotten amazing actors. I haven't felt that we've been marginalized at all. I mean, the only difficulties are, you know, sometimes the fact that we're on the West Coast and East Coast is on a different time zone, and, you know, that kind of thing, that we're helped with technology. But otherwise, I think the show is marvelous here.
And we are able to get actors probably that we wouldn't, because people coming here to do Broadway, and we'll get them during the, we have a very good production that will manipulate schedules so people can make theater, the curtain.
I was wondering, there was a period where Chris Noth wasn't in for a few shows and he was on Broadway, and I was wondering, like, oh, is this the time to give him time to do that show?
Well, he was supposed to be in that fucking episode. We had to rewrite it very last minute to write him. The one where he wins the election. Yeah.